Guys, it's Quinn, and today we're going to be taking a non-spoiler look at Spectre. Now, I saw the film a few days ago, and I've given it time to ferment, so I'm going to go into the things I liked and disliked about the film. I'm going to be sure to avoid any spoilers. I'm going to be doing a later, probably a longer video on the spoilers of this film, but right now, we're just going to be talking about the gist of what made Spectre good and bad, so let's get into it. Now, when talking about this film, one of the main things I noticed really quickly was that this film really goes old school. Now, I've been talking to a lot of people, and I've been trying to make a comparison of what this film is like, and I think it's sort of Pierce Brosnan meets Live and Let Die for Your Eyes Only. It's a really weird mix of films. I've found that every single Daniel Craig film, in some way, shape, or form, you can compare to past Bond films. Casino Royale is pretty similar to Doctor No. Quantum of Solace is just in its own right kind of shitty, so we'll skip it. Skyfall, it has a lot of hints of On Her Majesty's Secret Service and Goldeneye, whereas Spectre is sort of its own man. I don't even know how to describe it. So with that, the things that I liked about it a lot were the action pieces. I think if you've seen any sort of reviews for this film yet, you'll know that the biggest thing that people have raved about is the action scenes, and I don't think this is really a spoiler in any way, shape, or form, but there's a few distinct ones. As you saw in the trailer, there is one that goes down in a train, which it was funny. The person I saw the film with, they left as the fight started and then came back as the fight ended. It was kind of terrible. I think it was probably the best scene in the film, and for me, also another thing that was great was the pre-title sequence. I thought it was very well done. I've heard some people sort of be angry about it for various reasons, which I'll get into in a later video. But for me personally, I think the way it was shot and the action that goes down is exactly what we needed in this sort of revamped old school Bond film. It really had vibes of Goldeneye, Live and Let Die. It was a lot like Tomorrow Never Dies. I really was kind of blown away. I thought he was going to do a clip from Tomorrow Never Dies. That's how similar some of the bits were. But it was really a great showpiece, to get back into this film. Something which I alluded to in a past video also happened at the beginning of the film, which made me very happy. But overall, the action in this film was sort of the thing that carried it. And if you're like me and you like sort of campier action films, this is definitely one that you're going to enjoy. Now, it's hard to talk about the cast, really, because that would definitely go into spoiler territory, but I think it's fair to talk about Daniel Craig in this one. He really, by far, this is his best performance. I think a lot of people find that by the third or fourth Bond film, the actors are super comfortable. So, with Sean Connery, he was great in Goldfinger. I personally think he's better in the Thunderball. You have someone like Roger Moore. He was great in The Spy Who Loved Me. He was just even more comfortable and could pull off the camp in Moonraker. Pierce Brosnan, even though a lot of people hate the film, he was very good in Die Another Day. You cannot deny that much, at least. He had a lot to work with. And then you have Daniel Craig, who, great in Skyfall, but in this film, he finally came into, his Bond's self. Like, the other three films were, the origins, him getting into what he's become, why he has an emotional sense. This one is more why, how he's sort of, gone past that. It's like, it's another day on the job. It's sort of like Goldeneye, he's doing all these crazy things, but, he's into it. This is what he's been doing, and I'm really happy to see that. And as you guys have all heard, I've heard rumors that he might be quitting the role, which I would completely understand. If you guys have seen things on Sean Connery as to why he hates the Bond series, I could completely understand as to why Daniel Craig would want to quit. But it would just be a big shame, because especially after this film, we can see what he can do, and I don't know anyone who could overtake him almost in this series right now. As you guys know, I've never really been a fan of Daniel Craig, but right now he's definitely better than me. I used to rank him behind Dalton. I think he's way surpassed Dalton now. I think he's absolutely fantastic for the role, and although Brosnan will always be my favorite, he just brings that that I don't even think Brosnan had. He's such a badass in this film. I mean, there's one time, this isn't a spoiler, it's just kind of funny. There's two security guards coming at him, and he just right hooks the first one. The second one, he just kind of points a finger at, and the security guard, like, like backs up, like in fear. That's what we should see in Bond films. We got to get that grit back, and that's what we've been sorely missing for a long time since. And I hate to say it, since Die Another Day, we've been missing that sort of, umph and grit from Bond himself, and I'm so happy to see that again from Craig. I've been given too much praising, so I think it's time to be a little negative. And what did I dislike about this film? And I've really been thinking about it because this film, for some reason, I don't know why, it just isn't as good as Skyfall. And I think the reason is because this film is very unrefined. And I've really been thinking about it because this film, I enjoy it a lot, but I think the biggest problem is that they don't know exactly where they wanted to go with it. If you guys have seen the film, I'm not going to say who, but there's one or two characters that are just kind of dropped after a scene or two, and it's kind of unbelievable that, they spent so much time sort of establishing these characters, and they just, boom, out of thin air, they're gone for the rest of the film, and I was really bummed about that. They were great characters, and I think you could have done a lot with them. So the fact that they just sort of disappear, it's like, why were they there in the first place? But anyways, in the plot itself, they just sort of skip around a lot, and I'm okay with this, If you want to do ADHD filmmaking, I'm fine with that. But the fact that there's no real direction the entire time is kind of confusing. Like, I know the Bond lore, if you will, better than just about anyone, but when I'm confused as to how certain characters are thrown in, because it really made no sense the way that they shoved in some characters. One in particular, I'll just throw it in there because he's in the film. Mr. White, the way he gets into the film is still confusing to me. Maybe I just need to rewatch it. Maybe I wasn't paying attention enough, but the way he in particular is thrown into the movie is just, it's so ramshackle. It's like Skyfall depended on very small things, Silva getting captured, escaping, and then the train bit, he depended on that. But at least it made sense with what the film was happening. This one was just like, Bond overhears the thing. He said, oh, that's Mr. White. He just goes to Austria. It's like, come on. I mean, this, it just doesn't really tie together well, and I appreciate what they're going for with that. It's just, when this movie's 2.5 hours, you'd think that things would link together better, and I appreciate how they got some things in, like the way the DB-10 was thrown in was hilarious. It was a really great scene how they got that in, but different things about how they got Mr. White in particular were just very confusing, and I'm not against it. I mean, I understood why they wanted to bring all these characters in, especially if you've seen the movie, why all these characters are in here, but it's just, it drives me nuts, the fact that they go for this, potential, and it just completely makes absolutely no sense. I guess in a way that kind of ties back with the older Roger Moore, Sean Connery films. Things don't really make sense sometimes, but you just kind of have to go with it. And I'm down for that. I love the old films. One of my favorite Bond films is From Russia with Love, and that one was a lot of like, this leads to this, leads to that, leads to that, and I'm down for that. It's just, this just sort of, it felt off, and that's why I think Skyfall is better, just because everything felt more refined than this film. But compared to the rest of the Bond series, and in particular the Craig era, I think Spectre is really good and it holds up. Although Casino Royale and Spectre are definitely, Skyfall are definitely better movies. I think Spectre really holds its ground, if you will, in the Bond series. Like, it feels like it belongs, unlike, Quantum of Solace. But I think that this film is a lot of fun. It really ties back together a lot of things that we are missing in the Bond series. The death of Blofeld and Diamonds Are Forever, that is something that I think all fans can agree drives us nuts. So I'm happy that they finally address things like that. And, again, in For Your Eyes Only, he pseudo dies. So I'm glad that they finally bring him back and give sort of a, an establishment for his character. And I think that that's really one of the big things this series as a whole miss. Something like Star Wars, it's great because the villains were so well established, and their deaths were really memorable, whereas in the Bond series previously, Blofeld never really got a good death. So I'm happy that they finally bring him back and we get some establishment as to his character. I'm not saying he died. He may have, he may not have. You have to see the movie. But it's just, I'm happy that they finally established his character, and that's one of the big reasons I love, well, not loved, but I really liked Spectre, is because it just established the entire Bond universe as something more complete. Again, though the timeline is kind of screwed up, you'll see why, but it's, I'm happy that they sacrificed that at least to make the series make more sense, even though this film in particular did not. So overall, Spectre is not a magnificent movie by any stretch of the imagination. I think that there are definitely problems which I will discuss in the next video, but this film is a lot of fun for me, and in particular, if you're a Bond fan, you'll enjoy it a lot. I think in order to get what's happening, though, in this film, if you have not seen it yet, you need to see, at a minimum, all the Craig films, and definitely some of the Spectre, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, From Russia with Love, Diamonds Are Forever. I'm just throwing names out here, but you need to see some Spectre films. This film, though, is very fun. It's very good. Don't expect to have your mind blown. It's not like anything super creative, but this film has really great moments, which I, again, will discuss in my next spoiler video. But overall, this film's a lot of fun, and if you guys like Bond and you like camp in any way, shape, or form, this film's for you. If you want more James Bond content, be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time for another James Bond review. Now, before I go, my water polo team's been requesting this. The only reason I was able to see Spectre is because we won our last league game, and they've been asking me to give them a shout-out, so there we go. There's your shout-out. Anyways, like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Ciao.